All right, welcome to Alabama Gristmill. Good to have you join us today. We've got a wonderful story here today coming up. But first, introduce myself. I'm Mike Causey and co-host Donna Causey. How you doing today?
Hello, how are you today on this beautiful day? We've had a lot of beautiful weather here lately, except for it's very, very hot. So
this time of year is a little hotter than normal.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the fall, really getting here. We're especially involved now, but usually, it'd always be around the fair coming to town in Birmingham that the cold weather setting in. I don't know if it's going to make it this year, though.
Yeah, especially now that we're in the deep of football season, too. I mean, I don't need a summer football game. I'm looking for the fall leaves and the whole deal, crisp nights and all that with football going on.
Right. I noticed, though, that the little maple tree that I always look at in my house is getting some yellow leaves on it. So I'm getting excited. Maybe it's right around the corner.
Yes, I think it's going to be pretty soon. So, and we've got a good story today. Like I said in the lead off, it's something very historical in Alabama and a nice bit of culture. And a lot of people know about it, but we kind of want to make sure you hadn't heard about it to touch on it. And it's the story of Gee's Bend.
There's I have a lot of pictures and photographs from around the 1930s and 37 when they're on the website that the listeners might want to look at. So check out the AlabamaPioneers.com website and you can type in Gee's Bend in the search and you'll find all the pages of pictures that I have on there. So they go along with the story.
Yeah, we're lucky in the sense that it happened to be a certain area of time where, that they were doing a lot of documenting of cultural parts of Alabama and using pretty state-of-the-art stuff. So they had some great pictures and, great stories from the actual Gee's Bend area at the time. So like you said, those pictures are fascinating, and it's great to be able to see that's that good a glimpse in the history.
It sure is.
In that part of time.
I wish they'd do more of them now today because, we take our snapshots, our pictures with our phone a lot, and sometimes they don't make it to where, to save it like a regular photograph that we used to have and things like that are negatives. We don't have
That's
those.
True. They get stuck on the phone. Get stuck on the phone or get deleted and all that. Where, in those times, somebody would be taking a camera down, the film. It's a whole process where they were actually going in and actually thinking about what they did and put it together in all pretty much like a movie, or something along those, or a novel.
An artful way.
Yeah, an artful way, and with a focus and with a purpose.
Right.
And we're missing a little of that nowadays, I agree. But it allows you to capture the emotion and the feelings of the people involved as well. I mean, those pictures tell such a good story just in the pictures themselves. I mean, you can see in people's faces and you can kind of see the challenges and the life and the joy that they're going through.
Right. And if you don't capture them while all that's going on, it's gone.
Yep. Well, before we get into the story, like usual, we'll always mention we've got our patron program that helps support what we're doing here at Alabama Gristmill and the Alabama Pioneers website. And it helps us keep the history going, research, and putting out the podcast, doing all the articles, and kind of making that happen. And so we appreciate you can help join and be a patron of our program. But if not, completely understand. Just would appreciate you sharing there for what we're doing here to your friends and family. Anybody interested in Alabama history.
I want to add a bit about the books, too. The books also help us that we have.
That's true.
Don't forget those. They also, and it makes it gives you a permanent way to remember them because there's a lot of the stories we talk about wind up in our books.
Yeah, the proceeds from those books go right back into the site. So we do this more as a labor of love than anything else. And been doing it for a while now. Yeah. So, that helps us do that. And we really appreciate everything along those lines. So. Well, with that, I'll let you go ahead and get in the story and tell us about Gee's Bend in Alabama.
All right. Gee's Bend is actually named after a landowner, Joseph Gee, who came from North Carolina and established a cotton plantation in 1816 in the area with his 17 slaves. When he died, it passed to his nephews, Sterling and Charles Gee, along with 47 slaves. The brothers sold the plantation. and slaves in 1845 to their relative Mark H. Petway. It was to settle a $29,000 debt. About a year later, the Petway family moved from North Carolina to Gee's Bend and brought 100 slaves with them. So you can see there got to be quite a few that were settled in the area at the time. When slavery was abolished a few years later, many of them stayed on the plantation and worked as sharecroppers and adopted the last name of Petway. They stayed there because this is kind of an isolated area. The only way off was an old ferry that was kind of unreliable. The White Petway family owned the property until 1895, when it was sold to Adrian Sebastian Vandergraff. Vandergraff was not a local man. He was a lawyer from Tuscaloosa, so he operated the property as an absentee landlord, and he didn't see to the care of the tenants at the time. So they struggled quite a bit in trying to keep the property going. The property and the African-American sharecroppers were isolated on the Alabama River. The only way out, like I said before, was the unreliable ferry that approached from the east to a muddy road. The people suffered quite a bit during the Great Depression due to this isolation. They were almost all forgotten, and they had to struggle to just exist. A merchant in town worried about them, and he had given credit to the families as they struggled to make a living at Gee's Bend in the best way they knew how. But they became really destitute when he died, and the next merchant collected debts owed by taking their food, their animals, tools, and seed. When he took those things, that left them without a means, able to even survive. The word got out how they were struggling on this isolated spot in Gee's Bend, and they received public assistance from the Red Cross in 1932 and federal and state aid in 1933 and 1934, but it really was not enough. The Depression was going on, and the federal government was buying up land, and they bought land in the area of Gee's Bend as part of the resettlement program. In 1935, the resettlement administration that was part of Roosevelt's New Deal program came to their aid with small loans and farm and home management advice. In 1937, the United States government resettlement program was in full swing, and it purchased the old Petway plantation and 2 adjacent farms in Wilcox County, Alabama. They divided the land and rented it to the tenants. During the 1940s, many families at Gee's Bend bought the farms back from the government for an average of about $1,400 each. The rehabilitation loans that they gave them was averaged around $353, were given to the Gee's Bend families, and a campaign for building houses, barns, and schoolhouse and a sawmill took place, and they began to take pictures and photographs of where they were living at the time. Residents were encouraged to replace their oxen with more efficient mules. They had used the oxen on the plantation days, and they just were difficult to handle. Photographers from the Farm Security Administration visited Gee's Bend often during the 1930s, from 35 to 37, even through 39. And we have a lot of those photographs of the community during their transition period from the days when they were first given loans till the houses were being built later on. On the website, alabamapioneers.com, if you want to see, they're really striking. You probably seen some of these photographs around from time to time, because these were really striking photographs to see the change and the transition. But they still struggled, like I said, because they were off the Alabama River. The ferry was not very efficient. In 1949, they lost the ferry service, one of the only accesses to Gee's Bend. And in 1961, the community was totally isolated again and still struggled. So that's when the quilters from New York fashion world kind of discovered them. And they were popular for a little while because the Gee's Bend women had for years been making these beautiful quilts, and they just were not seen. after 1960s, when the folk art time waned, they kind of lost sight of ways to make a living. A folk art collector named William Arnett, though, brought attention to the artistic quilts from the women of Gee's Bend, and he helped organize exhibitions for their work. He helped them quite a bit. The quilting tradition in Gee's Bend goes back to the 19th century, and it probably, they believe, is influenced by the Native American textiles and African textiles that they saw at the time. The African American women began piecing strips of cloth together to make bed covers because they didn't have any heat in their small little shacks. They had to find a way to stay warm for their children and for themselves. Throughout the post-Bellum years, they struggled to keep going. Finally, in 2003, more than 50 quilt makers founded the Gee's Bend Collective, which is now owned and operated by the women of Gee's Bend. So you can still take tours of the area and see it today. And you can see, like I said, we have many pages of the photographs that Arthur Rothstein took of Gee's Bend and Marion Post Wilcox took in 1939. The only way to get to Gee's Bend was to cross the river on the ferry operated by an 80-year-old man. And a photograph of the old man on the ferry can be seen on the website, alabamapioneers.com.
Well, like I said earlier, that was just a fascinating time in Alabama history, and a lot of culture that came out of that, and art, in that sense. And I love the fact they were able to document it so well.
The beauty of it is, when you look at those quilts, and you can go visit Gee's Bend today and see some of the work that they've done. And like I say, it's in the Smithsonian and everywhere. These women really did a lot to improve the quality of life in their community over the years. And
one thing I do like about it is it's a evidence of a good program the government was able to do at the time, and when it was really needed, for sure.
It definitely was.
And helping that area out and helping out and doing that, help that community out, help build that out, also created wonderful art. And now we've got a great document of history of that time. So it's a really good, successful government program.
Yeah, we're thankful for Arthur Rothstein and Marion Post Wilcox, who went out there in 37 and 39 and took the photographs of the resettlement program as it was being before and as it was implemented. We wouldn't have any documentation of it other than what was just written in government reports, other than them doing that. It really helped. There was even a picture of an 80-year-old man in one of the photographs on the old dilapidated ferry. I thought that was so interesting, and it showed several pictures of him. So it's really interesting.
One of my favorites. Yeah, and so that's, like you said, we've got those pictures on the website, alabamapioneers.com. I'll have the link in the show notes and your podcast player as well, so you can just click directly from that and go from there. So, but thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast, and we'll have many more coming up with Alabama Gristmill. If you get a chance, review us out on the website or out on the your various podcast players, on Apple Podcasts, the whole range. We always appreciate it. Even the not so good ones.
Yeah, sometimes people don't like things.
They were giving you a hard time on your
voice.
They were trying to give you a hard time on your voice, and I'm like, well, you've got this. This is the person telling the history. This is what we're trying to do, is to actually, use the authentic telling the history and all that. It wouldn't be fair if we got just a perfect voice model to come in and read a story. I like it coming from you, so I'm just biased on that.
Yeah, I want to tell both sides as much as I can. And sometimes you don't get both sides that was recorded anywhere. If it wasn't recorded, we can't provide information because we're not going to make it up. It's just what's there. What's there is there.
Definitely.
And what happened happened. There.
Well, that's good. Like I said, we'll go ahead and wrap this episode up of Alabama Gristmill, and we'll see you next time. And we'll let Red Foley play us out